Hello everyone. Welcome to our live stream. I'm just trying to play with something in the backyard. I didn't realize, it's just already time. Hello everyone. How are you all doing? Let me know in the chat first if you can hear me loud and clear, and say hello wherever you are from. Um, and yeah, I'm really excited for our live. Yay! I just went to the other window to hear myself, and it was all good. We got people piling up already, and it's just exciting. I did have a good sleep this time around, but I also got surprised when it was already 4:15 when I woke up. I'm like, oh, it's a lifetime. Go. All right. Where are you all watching from? I can see a lot of people saying hellos. Shamshud says hello. And we got Bala from Tamil Nadu, Hemant from Tirupati, Oscar from San Francisco, California. We got Surya from Hyderabad. We got Fahim from Bangladesh. Oh, wow, wow. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Krish, Krishina from Hubli and Surya from Srikakulam. This is from Qatar, Poland, Stainsla. I hope I pronounced that right. And wow. Hello and welcome all. Today we are going to do really awesome stuff with Power BI. But instead of just focusing on Power BI, we're actually going to go through the journey of looking at Power Query, Power Pivot, Power BI, all in a flow with a real world data set. I am excited for this simply because this is the first live stream I'm doing in about 3 months or 2.5 months now. Ever since I got braces, I've been trying to avoid doing live simply because sometimes it's not easy to talk at length when you have got braces. But this month I'm feeling good, so I figured, yeah, what the heck, I'll just do the live and figure out how this goes. So here we go again. If you are one of the regulars who have been watching my lives last year and this year, say hello in the chat. uh, you know mm, it'll be always good to hear from one of the OG people who watch my lives all the time. Wow. This is awesome. Dinesh says, your biggest fan here from Ahmedabad, Gujarat. Thank you so much, Dinesh. That is really awesome. um, Aniket says, hi from Australia. Man, I don't envy you. I think it must be about 3 or 2, depending on which part of Australia you're from, in the night. So thank you so much for taking time out of your late night to join me on this live. Uh, Vijay says, sir, how are you? I am doing really great. Thank you. Thanks for asking. I I had an amazing week last week, doing some video recording, and and it's winter time here in New Zealand. So I the this last week has been kind of crazy with lots of wind and rain. But in general, I like winters because I like a little bit colder days. So I'm enjoying. I'm having really great time doing what I do every day. So that was good. I hope you all are doing great as well. And yeah, I see some familiar names, but also because there's kind of heaps of messages coming in, sometimes I miss, and I scroll up and down, and then I go back. I think I see a message from Mira. I remember that name from earlier live streams. Kubrak says hello from Ukraine. Hello, Kubrak. Um, and Arif says, hello, Chandu. Thanks a lot for all your videos. Learned a lot from you. Arif from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Hi, Arif. Thank you so much. Thanks for that lovely message. And Tomek says, do you the braces hurt? Mine was tough. They don't personally hurt that much. It's just I feel that when I talk a lot, which is really what I do for a living, right? I'm talking in videos or podcasts or whatever I do, and at length without taking any breathing rooms too much. Sometimes the wires tend to cut into my skin. So that was the problem. I noticed, especially if I'm doing a 10-minute recording, I would do it in a single take previously, but now I have to break it down into 4 or 5 takes simply because it was getting a little too much. But yeah, I think now this month has been good. Every month I go to the dentist, they readjust the wire and do something. So some months it wasn't that good, but this month is pretty good actually. And I think it's the hard part is done now. It's kind of moving the teeth slowly rather than drastically. Lalit says from hi from Dublin. Hi Lalit. And Funway says congratulations in advance. Soon you'll complete 500K on YouTube. Yay! uh, thank you so much. I just can't believe that there's like 500,000 people tuned into the channel one way or another. So it's just an awesome feeling, and it is a massive privilege, and it just feels crazy that that's even happening. So thank you. All right. So what we're gonna do is we'll start off with the usual question, which is let me know what is it that you're drinking. I'm having a coffee again. It's early morning. I don't know if you see the special guest today. Can you see? Can you see the dog? She's kind of sleeping in the back. Today, Excel joined us, even though I told her it's a Power BI stream. We got no role for you. She said, I can't sleep outside, so she's sleeping there. Um, those of you who are new, our dog's name is Excel. And yeah. So yeah, let me know what is it that you're drinking. I made a coffee. I haven't even tasted it yet. Hmm, not bad. And while we are doing that, I think I set up a poll. So I'm going to go and close that. I asked in the chat, when is the last time you used Power BI? And this is what people have said. 46% of you, about 360 votes. So said they have used it in the last 7 days. So that's mean most of you are like there. But 42% of people also said more than a month ago. So if you post a message, if you never used Power BI in your life, and this is the first time you're attending a video about Power BI, like you've never used it, let me know. You might be kind of like bamboozled by what's going on, like, oh my god, where is this heading? But some more votes are coming in, but I think that's kind of a good indication that about half of the class, half of the live has used Power BI as recently as a week or a month ago, and the other half were like 1 month before. All right. We got a super from Santosh. Thank you so Santosh for that. You're awesome for doing this. And we do have some people who are first timers. Rennie says first timer here. And Tavik says I drink coffee with New York accent. Thank you. And Tyrone says hello from South Africa. Hello. And Manpreet says first time as well. Oh wow. Um, and Gyana says I never used BI before. Okay. Okay. This is not meant to be like a beginner type of a live. I do have other videos on the channel, but this time around we are gonna kind of pick up a little bit, not at a beginner stage, probably halfway between beginner and intermediate. But hopefully, some of it makes sense. If not, enjoy the show. Pick up some ideas, and later on, kind of figure out how to solve the puzzle. It's like trying to solve one of those jigsaw puzzles, but The usual way would be you'd start in the corners, but you're starting somewhere in the middle, and then you're kind of working your way out. And Anup says only Power Query part in the last 7 days. Well, that's as good as using Power BI. I mean, most of the time, even when I use Power BI, I spend like 80% of the time either in Power Query or Power Pivot, and just about 10-20% in Power BI. So it's all the same. And Sunil says fast. Okay. Philip is here. Hey, Philip, how are you? Philip, Power BI is awesome. Thank you so much. Excel back there, she's taking an offense to it. She's like, oh, what is this talk about Power BI? And many other first timers. So thank you. Jörg, greetings from Switzerland. Thank you. Thanks for the greetings. And how are you? All right. So I see that we are all nicely settled in. The audio is all good. And you all have got your own drinks. I got my coffee. So we're going to jump in and get into the session formalities now. But before I do that, I thought it would be a good idea to make a simple request for you all. If you're watching this, make sure that you are hitting that like button. Normally, I don't even ask this, but last week, maybe 10 days ago, I had a meeting with my YouTube manager. So as your channel grows, YouTube assigns an employee from Google to kind of help you work with your channel. So I had a meeting with them. And one of the cool things that they suggested is during the live, asking for a like is like a really good thing, apparently, for your channel. Not that that's even important, but it's a good thing. Like, you're there, you're hearing to me live talk. So I'm asking you, if you have not liked the video yet, give it a like. That really helps, apparently. So we're going to see that as a data analyst in me. I'm like, oh, let me see what happens if I run this experiment now, and then watch what happens to the video after a couple of weeks. So that'd be fun. If you're watching it live, like it. If you're watching it in the replay, again, please like it. That is really helpful. And if you have not subscribed yet, consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy what I do, which is Excel, Power BI, and SQL, and a bit of this and that. So, yay. On that note, let's take out that ticker. And I'm going to get into my screen. I've got a small presentation to kind of set the tone for what's going to happen today. And then we're going to jump into Power BI. A quick heads up, if you want to follow along, like you're watching this on a PC or a desk laptop, and you're thinking, oh, I want to see what Chandoo is doing, but I also want to do it on my computer. I've got a data set for you. The data set can be obtained by going to the video description. There is a link there. I put that about 15 minutes ago. So go and grab that link and get that file. That is if you want to follow along. Otherwise, you can watch me do it. But if you want to ask also questions and how to do this or that, it's helpful if you have the data file. So get the data file. The link is in the video description. But I'll also talk about that in the presentation anyway. So I'm going to add this to the stream. So this is the file that we are going to build. I'll come and do a demo on this in a minute, but let's just go into the PowerPoint and let's build that. Okay, so that's that. So even though the session is called Power Query, Power Pivot plus Power BI, it's like using all the buzzwords. Essentially, we are going to be doing like a Power BI journey. So Power BI, what we are going to do is we're going to do a little bit of all these 5 things. So we're going to figure out how to do the data load and exploratory data analysis, EDA, using Power Query. We're also going to do a little bit of data cleansing there. And then we are gonna ask these questions. A little bit about the data here. We are using the house price data of Melbourne. So it's Melbourne house price data set. Real life data set. I obtained this data from Kaggle. Kaggle is open data community. So you can go there, you can kind of download lots of different publicly shared data sets. So I got this data. This data is not latest data. The prices are from, I think, 2016, 17, something like that, pre-COVID prices. So we're going to get that data, and then I have done something on top of the data. I'll explain it again later when we go into the file. So we're going to do some of the analysis by asking business questions like, where are the costliest question houses, and some of these other things. So the agenda after we load the data and ask the first thing is a little bit fluid. This is because it's a live stream, so a lot will change based on what questions you are asking or which way we go as we analyze. So I don't want to pin us down to doing all the things. As long as you are learning, as long as I am having fun, as long as we are making good progress, that's all good. So, but hopefully we get to do a little bit of all of these things. So that's the agenda. So here is a simple demo. So that's kind of like a preview of what we are doing in the main act. Yeah, but hopefully we get to do a little bit more, less around that bit. So before we start, I got 4 things for you. Download the files if you want to follow along. If you have got any specific questions about what I'm talking about or explaining, ask a question. You're more than welcome to ask questions, but please flag them with a Q at the beginning. We got like 400 plus people watching the stream as of now. So it can get a little bit noisy after times when you're asking questions or generally chatting. So ask questions. Don't repeat your questions. If you asked something and I didn't get to your question, please don't repeat and spam the chat or comments. It doesn't really help anyone. And don't forget to be awesome, right? Be nice, be awesome, have fun, and help each other out. If somebody else is asking a question and you know what the answer is, feel free to chip in and say that. And the whole point of doing a live rather than recording something and uploading on my channel is so that we all get to have fun together in a shared moment of experience. So that's the whole thing. So you have fun, I have fun, let's all enjoy. And some of you already know this, but most of my live streams start with a really lame dad joke. So here we go. Why can't the business intelligence analyst marry? It's not a real guy, it's just a stock photo. He kept going for one too many relationships. All right, that's the dad joke. We're out of that. Now let's get into Power BI. I'm gonna quickly pop into the chat to see anything is going. All right, that's all good. So like I said, this is the file that I was hoping we will finish this by the end of the session. We might actually go beyond that because, to be honest, it didn't take me that long to build this, but we might not even get there. So what is this? It's a Melbourne housing price analysis. Let's just collapse some of these so we have got more space on that. And here I'm answering the question, what are the costliest suburbs in Melbourne? So we have got all these suburbs, how many houses are there in the listing data, and what is the average price, and a little bit of suburb profile going on here, and how the houses are spread, like how many bedroom houses are there. So at an overall level, we have got 3 bedroom houses, 1300, and 2 bedrooms 828, and 4 bedrooms 565. But if I go into one of the costlier suburbs like Brighton with $2 million average, so that's where that is. I am not from Melbourne, so I don't really know any of these suburbs, but it kind of naturally explains that a costlier suburb is also one of the sea facing suburb of Melbourne. And this is how the spread looks like. 46 houses on average about 11 kilometers from city. 15% of the houses are apartments, and that's how it looks. If I go to Glen Iris, 1.5 million. This is how that is in Doncaster. Again, that's the point, but we can't get there unless we first get the data and make sure that everything that we need is in place and all of that. So that's the process. That's the journey that we are going to do. I'll close this, and then we're going to start from blank slate, blank Excel workbook, sorry, Power BI workbook, and bring the data and work on this. So we'll go to File, New, Power BI. All right, while I do that, I just want to exchange, make sure that I address the super chat. So Syed sends in a super chat as well. Thank you, Syed. And he also asks, have you tried the Notable plugin with Chat GPT? Now, I do use Chat GPT a lot. In fact, on the channel, I recently put a video on Chat GPT made this Excel dashboard for me or something like that. And yeah, I use it, but not with plugins though. And not also I'm not a paid member of that platform yet. I kind of got tempted to get into that, but as it is, I have got enough to chew on my plate. So I don't want to get into Chat GPT. But yeah, no, I've not used the plugins, but I do use ChatGPT a lot to simplify my work, research new ideas, and all of that. So almost every day I get into ChatGPT. Have you guys used ChatGPT much? Okay, so I'm gonna take myself off the camera so that we have full screen for what I'm showing. But I'll come and show my face from time to time, especially when I'm talking to you rather than doing something on the screen. Don't worry, I'm still here. It's just it's helpful if my face is not in the way of things and you know where my mouse is going and all of that. So we're gonna go to a different layout, and here we are. Now we're gonna start from a blank canvas, and I'll quickly show you what is in the file, the sample data file. It's like I mentioned, it's the Melbourne house pricing data. So here is the data set. I took it from Kaggle. The original Kaggle file had, I think, about 300,000 listings or something crazy like that. So it's a lot of data. And what I did is I found that while there is so much data, many times when you are explaining things, it's not helpful if you have got a really large set of data. It might be helpful to understand the power or how fast your measures would be when you are testing that. But for about 90% of real world explanations, you don't need 300,000 rows to understand how Power BI works or Excel works. So what I did is I took the data and then I randomly sampled uh, 3,000 houses. So this is only 3,000 rows of the original data set. That's it. I didn't do anything else. I may have removed one or two columns that I thought were not relevant at all uh, from an analysis perspective. But everything else is as per that data. I didn't introduce anything. It's most as it is the data. Some columns were gone, but randomly sampled 3,000 rows. So that's the only limitation. The source Kaggle link is also here in case you want to get the original data set and compare this sample with how the bigger thing is. That is all good. And it is a good data set if you want to not just learn Power BI, but also practice some of the machine learning or any other algorithmic stuff, or even test out how well your Excel formulas would scale up when you throw a large set of data at them. So feel free to get the original data set if you want to learn more. And probably Kaggle has many other data sets too, but this is something that I thought is good enough for us to get our hands dirty with Power BI. So we are gonna load up this data into Power BI, do a little bit of cleansing, do a little bit of EDA first. That's our first objective. Close this guy, and it's in Excel. So I'm gonna use import data from Excel in Power BI. I'm using the July 2023 version, by the way. So pretty much the latest version, and point to the file wherever you have downloaded it, and get into Power BI. And here in the navigator, so you can see that Power BI has identified the data sheet, but also this is something new that you may have noticed. It also identified a table using the kind of like a little bit of AI features built into Power BI. So even though there is no table in the data, it's just cell ranges, Power BI has been able to identify a table. Um, Normally, I'm a little bit skeptical about these kind of suggested table feature because sometimes it doesn't really pick up everything. So I tend to go with this, but feel free to use this as well. Either way, it's fine. So you can select the data table. We are going to go through this because this will give us a chance to do a little bit more data cleansing as well. So it's going to pick up everything in that spreadsheet, not just the data, whereas the suggested table would have taken out those blank rows on the top and blank column. We will just use the data, and then we are going to transform this data, which will take us to Power Query, where we will then start our first step of the journey. So transform, and once you are here inside Power Query, then we are now gonna clean this data, make sure that it is only in the right shape and size as we want for our further points of analysis. So this is where it is helpful to kind of draw a simple picture of what is happening in Power BI. What are the stages through which your data goes through, so that every time you're analyzing the data, you're thinking in those stages. So I'll do a little bit of right. I was not really thinking about this particular aspect when I started the day, but it is really helpful. So I'm gonna put a notepad thing. This is just a canvas, so I can draw. And here, let me just quickly explain what is inside Power BI and what happens. Most of you have been using Power BI, but also there are some new people. So I figured a little bit of context, just a couple of minutes explanation. So normally the tendency to think about Power BI as one big box, Power BI, one software. So this is what we are thinking in our mind. But actually what Power BI is, it's not one box, it's actually at least three boxes. Nowadays it's actually more than that, but you know, we'll just assume there is only three boxes for now. So say you got some data here. So this is the house pricing data. It doesn't really go into Power BI. It goes actually into the first box. This first box is Power Query. So Power Query is the data receiving part where your data comes in, and then you can then tell Power Query how you want this data to be transformed, or how you want this data to be cleaned, or how you want this data to be treated. So this is where you are telling Power Query, my data is in SQL Server, my data is in this cloud system, actually half of my data is in the cloud, the other half is in the network folder here, like that. Whatever it is, you tell Power Query, and then Power Query will do all the data related stuff. So once the Power Query finishes its job, then the data gets passed to the next box, which is Power Pivot. Power Pivot, what it does is it calculates things on top of your data. It helps you analyze the data. It helps you model the data. So usually in this case, today's example, we're only using one set of data, but many times in your business situations, you might be using 5, 6 different sets of data. So then Power Pivot will help you model that data. You can then tell Power Pivot, I got these 3 tables, they are linked to each other through these relationships and all of that. So that's what Power Pivot does. You can model, you can calculate, you can analyze. Once Power Pivot finishes its job, then it kind of goes into the third box, which technically doesn't really have any name, but I like to call this as the canvas, or this is really what we see. So many people, when they think about Power BI, this is what they're thinking about, because these other 2 boxes are behind scenes. So think of Power BI like a big fancy car. When you think about a car, what do you think? You think about the nice steering wheel or leather seats or comfortable inside or music system. Those are what you're thinking, or the color of the car or the shape of the car. But it cannot function without what is inside the car. So you do need engine, you need combustion system and all of the other things for the car to function. So, but your mind is not actively thinking about those things when you think about a car. Exactly the same way, when you think about Power BI, the third box is what we really think about. That's the visual layer where you are creating charts, setting up interactions, and building reports and all of that. So that's the kind of like an internal architecture of Power BI, for lack of better words. So that's why I titled my live stream like that. I wanted you to kind of a little bit experience each of the 3 layers. So right now we are here. Eventually we'll go there, and finally we'll go here as well. So a little bit of like a preschooler drawing here on how Power BI is. All right, we'll cancel that guy out. We got another super as well from Bala. Thank you so much for that super sticker, Bala. And then we are back into Power Query here. I'll again turn off my face for now. So now that we are here, what we will want to do is do a little bit of data cleansing, but we might want to do more of data cleansing as well, depending on what the objectives of analysis are. Right now, the biggest thing that I see is my shape of the data is not good. So if you see this, we got this entire column of nulls. In the Excel spreadsheet, we have got column A blank. That's why this is null. We don't need that. Likewise, we don't need any of these rows. Our actual data really begins from here. That's the header, and that's the data. So this is the header row is number 6, and 7 onwards is the data. So this is what we want. So we would like to take out column 1 as well as row numbers 1 to 5 out of the data. This is really simple. You have got within Power Query, remove rows button on the top here in the home ribbon. So if you tap that, remove top rows, and then if you say, get me, take out the top 5 rows, that's just going to take them out. Likewise, remove columns. I didn't do anything. I just hit that because column 1 was selected. That's gone. But another way to do that is right click on column 1 and then say remove. Column 1 is also gone. So now that we are in the correct shape, we'll take the row number 1, promote it to be headers. This is kind of like, again, very simple. You just go to home, use first row as headers. That's the button to do that. So that my headers are also set. And then comes the fun part. now that the data is in the correct shape, we need to also convert some of the data types. This is where by default, like if you don't do anything, you install Power BI and you're using it without customizing it, chances are at this stage of the process, Power BI would have, well, technically Power Query would have converted many of these data types as well. Whereas if you look at my screen, everything is ABC123. So none of my data types have been converted. My amount is in 123 and my date is also in 123. So I'm gonna force Power Query to convert some of these data. So I'll say a date needs to be right click and change type to date. Price is a whole number, and then distance is a decimal number, and bedrooms, bathroom, postcode, car, land size, these are also whole numbers. And lat and long would be obviously decimal numbers. So we'll select these two columns. You can hold down control when you're selecting multiple columns. Power Query will highlight all of them and then make them decimal numbers. Data type conversion is an important process of data cleansing. And when you do it correctly, you can, that means in the 3-box journey, when Power Pivot receives the data, it knows what the data types are. So then Power Pivot can analyze the data better. If you don't convert this, then it will look like a text value to Power Pivot. Then it cannot sum this data or average this data. So it will complain. Once we do this, then we can do that. But now that we are here, let's do a little bit of exploratory data analysis as well. Many times when you work with real business data sets, you might have some errors, omissions, missing values, and all sorts of things. Fortunately, being a Kaggle data set, um, this data is fairly clean. There's not much cleaning to be done, but still we can ask some questions and figure out if it is there. So within Power Pivot, it adds a column quality check on the top. So if you see here, that green bar is the column quality indicator. And it is actually 100% green for all the columns in my data. So you can see that 100% of my values are valid. There is 0 errors and 0 empty values. But it is saying only 1000. This is because by default, the profiling is done for the top 1000 rows. We can change this. We are going to change this in a minute. But this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're looking at 7 million rows of data and you think, oh, my column quality looks awesome here. But when you make a report, you're seeing all these blanks and errors and whatnot. That's because the profiling was not done on all the values. So you can actually see that information further down here. It says column profiling based on the top 1000 rows. And if you click on that little thing, you can change it to look at the entire data. It will slow down Power Query significantly when you deal with large files. But if that's the objective, that you want to look at it. I'm going to now show you other things that are really helpful. If I go to view, there are many other tools that Power Query has that will help you quickly get a better sense of data. So right now, we have not enabled any of them, but I'm going to play with some of these things. So we can look at column quality, distribution, and profile. So I'm going to first look at column distribution. What it does is, depending on the value of the column, especially for number columns, it's going to add a mini graph up top to give you how the values are spread. So the price is kind of having a distribution like this. Again, we are only looking at top 1000 rows. This is expected. Usually a price in real life scenario would have a kind of like a weird distribution where the pattern would be there might be fewer houses with lower prices, a lot of houses with higher prices, and then a long tail of lower prices. So this is the pattern that I'm looking for. That seems to be the case. But again, Melbourne being one of the costliest cities in the world as of 2016, it would also have probably very less houses here and then more there. So that kind of confirms to what we are seeing there. But we are going to profile now for all of the rows. So rather than top 1000, so I'm going to click and look at that. So this is how the 3000 samples look like. Date, kind of more or less uniform distribution. Distance to city, lot of houses near the city, and the farther you go, fewer houses. Again, that is fine. Number of bedrooms, more like a this kind of a reverse hockey stick kind of an pattern there, which is expected. And even though it shows distribution for lat and long, this is kind of irrelevant because that doesn't really tell you anything. Land size is interesting. If you see, there is a very large number of houses with zero land size and then quite a few smaller thing. So what's going on here is, if you're owning a house of the type unit or an apartment, you don't technically own any of the land. So your land would be zero. And because there is going to be a lot of apartments, there is a lot of them with zero land size. So that's why that distribution is there. But when you look at this profile, it will immediately reveal the underlying nature of data without having to do anything. So through Power Query itself, you can get a sense of what's going on. Have you guys used this particular thing in Power Query? Let me know what your thoughts are. And I just want to acknowledge Vinod as well. Vinod, thanks for the super sticker. And the second thing that I want to show you is the column profile option. So if I select this, no, not that. Yeah, column profile. When you select that, whichever column you pick, so I'm picking price column, Power Query would add a column statistics and value distribution panels at the down, which will give you even more. So for example, here, it tells me all the statistics about the column that I picked, the price column. So 3000 values are there. There is 0 errors, 0 empty values, 1058 distinct values, 589 unique values. That means they have only appeared once in the data. No zeros, no infinite values. Minimum is 145,000, maximum is $8 million. Average is this. Standard deviation, how many values are even and odd. So that's the distribution. This is really odd, isn't it? Like, all the house prices end in an even number and only 3 house prices have an odd value. Obviously, house price would have been rounded to the 1000 or something, or 100. That would be an even. But it is kind of crazy to see that. And when you look at this, let's say you're analyzing the prices of your products in a supermarket or something, you might come across something like a lot of your products are priced at odd numbers or whatever. Of course, there are going to be decimals as well, but that's so. Column profile, if you enable, you can kind of again peek into your data, see what's going on. And this is interesting. Like, I can see the percentage of values as well, how many are there through all of that. So that's that. So using Power Query, you can do a lot of this kind of exploratory analysis without even writing a single DAX measure or anything. But traditionally, you don't do this level of in-depth looking at the data when you have large volumes of data, simply because this will be very slow. Because for Power Query to do this, it must actually get all the millions of rows of data that you are connected to and then do it. So it's not the optimal environment to profile at this level, but semi-large data sets, it will work all right. I make a point that even if I'm not using profile and distribution, at least I look at the green bar to make sure that I'm not seeing anything odd. Like, if you have got an error, it'll have a little bit of red coloring at the end, which means I need to polish this data a little bit more before I publish. So we do that, then this is all good. We are going to do one extra cleansing step, which is take out any columns that are not relevant for our analysis today. So for today's analysis, I'm thinking we are not going to look at method or the seller columns. They are not relevant. I'm not really planning to do anything. So I will take them out, but feel free to keep them on and use them to do your own analysis in your own time. In this live stream, I won't be doing anything with those. So I'm going to select these two columns, control hold to select them, and then remove them as well. And then that's gone. Likewise, you may want to limit your analysis to the listings and information only from 2016 or only from last quarter or something like that. So then you could apply some filters as well. I'm not bothering with that, but that level of filtering is also available. So once we finish all of that, final thing is I'm going to name this query. Right now it's called data. So I'll name this as Melb, short for Melbourne. And then hit the close and apply button to bring this data into Power BI. All right, time to show my face. I hope you're all enjoying this so far. And if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I know that there are some questions coming in, but also some questions are not in the syllabus. So I'm not attempting that. Aji asks, what is the difference between distinct and unique values? So distinct, let's address unique first. Unique is any value that only happens once in the data, right? There is no other value like that. So that is unique. As long as you're clear on that dictionary definition of unique, we're all good. A distinct would be, let's say you have a list of values like 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5. So in that list, there are 5 distinct values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 has repeated. So 3 will be only counted once. So distinct is counting every value only once. If it has repeated, we are going to ignore all the repetitions. But unique is any value that has occurred only once. So that means 1, 2, 4, 5 are the unique values. 3 is a repeated value. So we're not counting that. So that's the difference. It's kind of like splitting the atom. Many times you don't really care about the unique values. You're counting the distinct values in a business analytics sense. But sometimes you may want to know the unique values also. So that's why I think there two are provided. And someone known, his recorded video will be available. That's the plan. As long as there is no other funny things going on in the live stream, this video should be up on my channel. So feel free to watch the replay or enjoy it later on if that's what you want to do. If you are watching this on the replay, don't forget to say hello and tell me how you're going with that. Okay, so we are now loading that data into Power BI. So you can see that the Melbourne data is here. It's come through. And now let's go ahead and do a little bit of analysis. The first thing that I want to do is I'm curious. Like I've only visited Melbourne a few times. Great city, by the way. I just love being in Melbourne. There's so much to do and it's a beautiful place. So I'm curious to know, where are all the houses in Melbourne and where are some of the costliest houses? So let's play a little bit of a little game where we imagine ourselves that we are the prospective house buyers in the city of Melbourne. So we want to buy a house in Melbourne, but obviously we don't know anything about Melbourne. So we would like to ask the questions on where are the costliest houses, which suburbs have the highest houses, costliest houses, and how that looks like. So that's the first question. It kind of gives us a chance to play a little bit with our data, use a little bit of Power Pivot and all of that. So this is my data. The initial thing that I want to do is I want to count how many houses are there. first, and then also count what is the average price. And then we'll use those two data points to get into our objective of figuring out where the costliest houses are. So we'll add a calculation. This is where we are now going from the first box of Power BI to the second box where that calculation happens. So we can right click on the MELB and do a new measure. So this measure, we are going to call this as house count is count rows on the MELB table, because each row in the Melbourne table is one house. So we are counting how many rows are there. That's how many houses would be. When you set up the measure, you can also apply the formats. So we'll make sure that there is 1,000 separator on this with the whole number formatting from the measure tools ribbon. Likewise, one more measure, this is going to be average price is average of the price column. And this is a currency. We don't need to see decimal points. I'm going to set this to 0 decimals on the average price. So we created two measures, average price and house count. Both of these are now added to the Melbourne table. Again, many people who have been using Power BI for a while, you kind of already know what measures are. But because we also have a few who are new, chances are when you're watching it in replay, you might again be a new person who is using Power BI. So I'll quickly explain a little bit about the nature of measures. Normally, when you add a measure, there is a tendency in our mind to think that we are adding a house count or average. So they show up in the table as an option. So here in my table here, so this is the table. We can see average price being listed as an item, house count being listed as an item. So we kind of think in our mind that they're part of the table. This is what our mind tells us, because that's how the thing looks. But the right way of thinking about this is, imagine this fist as your table. Melbourne table is this fist. We're thinking the average price is inside the table, or the house count is inside the table. So we're thinking it's part of the fist. That's not really how things work. So if this is the fist that has the data, the measures act on top of it. So they're not really part of the fist. They're only acting on top. That's the right way to look at it. The measures do not belong in the table. They act on top of the table. This is why, even though from a structural perspective, Power BI will show me the things are here, when you go to the data view, you're not finding any extra columns, because anything in the table would be a column. Whereas these measures are not columns, they act on top, so they don't really sit in the table. So once you are able to delink the idea of a field or a column from the measure, then you're actually moving closer towards understanding how measures work and how Power Pivot works. This is not a session on getting into the nuances and depths of Power Pivot, but that distinction should be made very clear early on in your journey. Otherwise, you're in for a lot of trouble. So I thought it's important to make that comment here, that the measures do not belong inside, they act on top. As long as you understand that, you can actually take that metaphor and extend it further, and you'll be able to get into deeper level of doing things with Power Pivot. And then Lysander says, can you pull another table into Power BI at this point? Yes, you can pull any number of tables at any point of the journey. This is another thing that, again, people do not realize. Time for me to bring my trusty white table here, white thing here. So if you remember earlier, we had this little thingy where we have three boxes. and we talked about how the data travels. But this is not a linear thing. I mean, it is linearly shown simply because that does make sense. But many times in the real world, what happens is we take some data, we push it, we do something, we push it again, we do something, and then we push it again, we do something. At this point, your client or your boss or you yourself realize, oh, wait, we do need something else as well. You can go back in time. You can go back and then bring another data set, take it through the journey, and then use the data set 1 and data set 2, mix them, mash them together, whatever you want, and then produce a third output here. So even though these three boxes are structured, you can always travel between these things as you fancy. Of course, it will be a very clumsy and inefficient way if you're always moving back and forth. So this is where, for larger situations, any business intelligence project, if you want it to be successful, you would want to minimize the traverse between these things as little as possible. I mean, there's nothing wrong in going back and forth all the time. You just don't want to waste your time doing this, especially if multiple people are doing different parts and there is teams and effort and all of that involved. So you may want to plan things, like you may want to figure out what all the things required first, get them everything here, do your cleaning first, then model it, then produce the outputs. That way you will minimize. But again, business is flexible, things are always changing, so you can always go back. So let's just say, even in this simple example, at this point of Melbourne price house analysis, you may want to bring in some additional information about the suburbs, like population or number of schools or other data set for the suburb level. You can, at this point, click on the get data and bring that data, do your transformations, model them, and then use two data sets together to analyze. I don't have that data, but if you do have, you can do that. All right. One other question and then we'll move on. Praful says, you spoke that Power Query will slow down if we have a large data set. Then how do we clean large data sets really? Power Query is not going to slow down with large data sets. What I meant is profiling and column quality and all of those things, those fancy features are going to be slow. Whatever cleaning steps you're doing on Power Query, it will not do them in real time. It will only do them in real time for the 1,000 rows that you're looking at, unless you force it to do it for all the millions of rows. The actual transformations will only apply at the time of load. So if you have a million rows and you say, out of this million, I want to introduce a new column, filter this and take out the blanks and whatever, you set all of those steps in Power Query, hit the load button, and at that time the process will run. And depending on what the source system is and how you have set up and what is the computer you're using or where this is happening, the speed of that will depend on those parameters. Power Query in itself is not slow. It's just some of the cleaning steps could be costly. And if that is the case, that is the case. But because we don't really load like every second, we update and look at the visuals every second, but the load is something that only happens every time you have new data. So you can optimize this. Instead of talking abstract, let me give you a real example. Imagine you have got a 7 million row data set and you are doing some transformations in Power Query, and you will produce a report which will be viewed by the executives every day in the morning. So then what normally companies do is they schedule the refresh to happen in the night around 3 or something like that, when nobody is looking at stuff. So then the refresh will happen, load will happen at that time. So the next day morning when you are at your desk looking at the data and reports, it will give you that updated thing. If you are working with larger data sets or real streaming data and all of that, then you can take the Power Query process and move it out and run it against a powerful system and all of that. So those are all possible. It's just, this is like a more mini version of that where everything is happening in my computer. So hopefully that is clear. Um, Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the suburbs now and figure out what is the costliest things. So we have got average price and house count available now. I'm gonna make a table, and in this table, I'm gonna, before when we making the table, um, let's first count how many suburbs are there. We got a lot of suburbs. House count will tell me how many houses are there, but we don't know how many suburbs are there. So we're gonna make a new measure. And in this, we want to count each suburb, but because the same suburb can have multiple houses, we don't want to count the same name again if it repeats. So there's a measure called distinct count. This will tell you how many distinct values are there. Don't confuse this with the unique thing. And here now, if I put a card visual and then put suburb count there, we can see that we got 276 suburbs. So this is a lot, right? Um, that means if I want to visualize the information, I will be making a column chart or a bar chart with 276 values, which will definitely look ugly and clumsy. That's why I went with the table. But if you didn't know this number and you make column chart and then you'll be like, oh, wait a sec, that looks really clumsy. Then you would have gone with the table. I already made that mistake once. So anyhow, in this table, we are going to list our suburbs, house count, and average price. So this is how it looks, all the 3,000 houses, on average 1 million. Now let's just talk a little bit about some Power BI tricks as well. When I make tables, normally for me at this time, if I'm reading myself, I have no problems. But if I'm presenting it to others, I find that the default text sizes are all too small. And I don't want to individually muck around and adjust the sizes for each visual. So I'll tell you one trick that will kind of save you time, especially if you want to change everything in one go. You can go to view, and here I have got themes. Um, the theme that we are using is the default theme, but you can change the theme. In fact, we're gonna go with the city park theme. It's a little bit more colorful, and I like this. So that theme will change all the things. Now we select the theme, automatically my text has also become smaller. What I was going for is bigger text, but anyhow, we're there. So now if you go back to themes, you can see customize the current theme. It might throw a little bit of warning saying theme requires updating. You just update it. And at this point, if you go to the text here, you can change the text in general across the board in your report by default. That means when you add a visual, by default, the text won't be 10 points. I want it to be readable for my presentation, so I want to go with 16 points. Likewise, you can change the font families and all of that. We're gonna change the font for the cards. I don't like the DIN font, so I'm gonna go with UI bold and 32 points for my cards. Likewise, if you want, you can also assign new colors and all of that. If you've got corporate colors that you want to use, you can try that. Whatever you do, if you apply, you can see that now, boom, instantly my text is bigger without me changing all the individual bits. So definitely use themes to save time. It will help you customize things in one go. In fact, we can take it to the next level wherein you customize the theme, you create a unique style that is relevant for your own reporting situation, and then save the theme. I'm gonna, and then save the theme, save current theme is here, and then publish this theme onto your team on SharePoint or whatever. So everybody in your organization can use that theme, and then they don't even have to customize. They just get that theme, and then they'll all be able to start with that as a starting point. So super time saving feature. I really love this. Definitely try it if you want to save time with themes. Taking a water break here. All right. We do have some very detailed questions here, but I'll come back to that. I wanted to make sure we kind of cover some ground before we go into questions. So this is how my suburbs and average price looks. Now let's just say we are kind of naive and we are asking the question, where are the costliest houses? You might be tempted to just look at the average. So we don't have the house count in the table, just the average, and then sort this and then come to the conclusion that, oh, Canterbury has the costliest house because their average is 2.8 million. That'll be very narrow way of looking at it. Imagine what would happen if there is only one house in Canterbury that got sold for 2.8 million in that data set. Because there is only one house, the average of that would be also 2.8 million. And you look at that and you come to the conclusion that Canterbury has the costliest houses. It may not be the case. There is a lot of cheaper houses there. It was just that they were never listed and hence never sold, and hence the data never appeared. So this is why having a secondary thing to substantiate or at least contrast the average would be helpful. So this is where the house count would be added. So when you add the house count, you can see that 2.8 million, 13 houses. So still a little bit decent, but just further down, you have got Brighton, 2.18 million, but 46 houses. So now this is a little bit significant, 46 houses, all averaging to 2.18 million. So this might be interesting. Even then, it can so happen that there is like a mega mansion in Brighton. So 46 houses, 45 of them have been sold for 500,000. But then this 46th house is like a big giant mansion owned by one of the billionaires and got sold for $20 million. So then that would also pull up the average. So never just look at these two numbers alone and come to the conclusion. You always want to go and explore. So that's where, after this, what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at the houses and then decide if that is the suburb where we are going to buy. For a second here, we are just all going to imagine that we are multi-millionaires or almost a billionaire. Let's just go with billionaire, like we are imagining. We stop at million. So we can afford anything. We want to make sure that we are buying into the right suburb. So let's look at these houses because we have got lat and long. It's a cool idea to visualize them on a map. So I would like to put it on a map. Before we do that, we need to first tell Power BI that these lat and long are not really numbers. They're actually latitude and longitude. So to do that, we can go to the data view, select the latitude column, and from the column tools here, using the data category, we need to first tell that this column is actually not uncategorized. It should be latitude. So select the column, data category, and then point to latitude. We'll do the same for long. So we both have kind of changed it. And now you can see in the field view, it doesn't show this kind of a sigma symbol. It shows the globe symbol next to these two fields, indicating that this is a little special type data that you have got there. And that's what it is denoting. Next up, we are going to insert a map. Power BI has a lot of maps. I feel kind of lost when I look at all these maps. And there's one more here. So, and recently they have added this one. This is called Azure Maps. This is a newer visual there that they have added. But I was not able to figure out how to give the lat and long data to this. It is expecting a location rather than lat and long. So I don't know if they have plans to add that, but this is the only one as of now that lets me work with lat and long data. So we're going to use that particular map. And one of these is not even a map. It's called shape map. It's for doing other stuff anyway. But we are going to use this guy there. So we're going to insert a map. And in this map, here you can see latitude and longitude there. So we're going to drop this and that there. And all these houses are in Melbourne. So this is how they are. And bubble size is my average price. So I'm going to take average price and put it into bubble size. So the costlier the average is in a location, the bigger that bubble is going to be. All good. Now if I pick Brighton, I can see where the houses are. Instantly I can see 46. All of these are here. Now the bubble sizes don't have that kind of a mega mansion scenario that I explained. Otherwise we would be looking at a really giant ball and everything else is like tiny dots. That's not happening, which is cool. Um, this is how the prices look. You can kind of point and see 3 million, 3 million. So a lot of 3 million houses, probably further behind. So the ocean facing ones would have been this. A little further behind, you might have slightly lesser houses like 1.5 million, but together they average up to 2.1. Pretty good. If I go to Canterbury, I can see what's happening here. This is a classic case, right? You can see a lot of small dots, but there is one giant mansion that sold for $8 million, which pulled up the prices of everything else as well. But a lot of them have kind of not as small, still 3 million is a lot of money, but there is a 8 million candidate here. We would not be able to discover these kind of things unless you look at the data. So in data analysis, one of the cornerstone principles is always look at the data. Never just take what you see for granted. And you can see the interactions kicking in nicely. If I pick Canterbury, my suburb count is only one because we are only looking at Canterbury. So there is only one suburb there. That's why that count is one. So yeah, that gives me a sense of what's happening here. Just three houses. Again, a little bit all over the place, but 2.95 one house and probably an apartment 1.25 and something else here. But because of this guy here, the average got pulled up. But if you see significantly high number of houses, that can kind of give you a proxy confidence that the average might also be good. Again, you don't want to trust everything. You want to look at the data. That's why we have got that visual there. How would you do it? Like if you are building this and if you're trying to answer the question, where are the costliest houses? What else would you add or what would you do differently? Let me know in the comment or chat, wherever you are, what you would do. All right, let me see what else is going on. I see that there's been a lot of chat going on and people are helping each other. That is really good. You are awesome for doing that. And Madhu says, wow, learned something new today. Thank you. Prashant says, if you realize that you shouldn't have deleted a column in the dataset after transforming the data and importing in powerbi, you can handle the situation by either re-importing. You don't need to do any of that. You can just go back to query editor. So from home, just click on transform data again, locate the step where you deleted and just delete that step and then come back and it'll bring that column for you. So Ujjwal says compare medians instead of average. That is a great idea. You can also look at median. So another statistic, well, averages can be swayed a little bit by very high or very low numbers. A median, on the other hand, is always just the midpoint of the data. So it'll give you a better sense that if median is 2.8, that means half the houses are more than that and the other half are less than that. So it'll give you a sense as well. So let's build a median as well. Let's go right click, new measure. Median price is median of price. And then let's bring that guy. We're gonna apply some formatting as well. Currency, 0 decimals. So again, you can see at an overall level, while 1 million is the average, median is only 905. So this alone kind of gives you a way that uh, because median is lower, we can see that there are obviously some very high value properties that are pulling up the overall average, while at a median level, we are only looking at 905. But a lot of places, they're kind of similar, like Princess Hill, two houses, so we're going to ignore that. But Brighton here, 2.18 and 2.04, those are very close numbers. So that kind of gives you a more sense of confidence that this number and that number and the value of houses in that suburb. But some places there might be like huge disparities. Another trick that you can also use is take out some of the lower quality data points at this stage. For example, any suburb that has sold less than 10 houses, we can say that doesn't really tell me much about the suburb. So we're going to take them out and look at houses where there is sufficient volume as evidence. So we can select this table, go to the filters panel here, and um, and then where it says house count is all, instead of looking at all kinds of house count, we can add a filter for this where it says greater than 10. That means we are only interested in house suburbs where there has been at least 10 houses sold. And apply that filter. That's going to take away some of the things. And then we are now looking at 2,339 listings instead of 3,000. But a lot of lower quality suburbs would have gone. And now we end up with kind of slightly higher volumes, like 55, 66 houses here. Richmond, 1.46 average, 1.41, 041 median. So really, like you can see middle of the road houses here across board without too many weird things going on. So this is one way to cut the data. PIB says, what about mode? Yeah, we could also look at mode. Normally, uh, like if you have when we did the column profiling back in Power Query, we kind of saw the distribution of price. So the prices are not broken into 4 or 5 distinct options. There is a lot of the price curve is kind of really wide and there is a long tail going on. That's how real world prices would be. So there is no one price that will be very frequent. But on the other hand, if you look at something like bedrooms, you might have a good mode there. Like mode is most frequent number of bedrooms in houses. So it will be 3 as per our data. So that will tell you a better way. Like if you calculate the average bedrooms, you might come up with 2.76, but that is ridiculous. Nobody has a 2.76 bedroom unless you're counting my last rental that did have a 2.76 bedroom. But jokes aside, that doesn't make much sense. So a mode would be better for those kind of things where you have a few distinct values and then you're looking at one of them. Mode would be good. But something like price, which is a little bit more fluid and there is lots of values, a mode wouldn't tell you much anything meaningful. But you can always try. You can calculate and then see what works. Uh, Mark says, did I miss the start of this webinar? Anyway, hi from Minnesota. Hi, Mark. Yeah, you did. But you can always watch the replay. It'll be there. So feel free to go back and see that. All right. So we did a little bit of analysis. We kind of come to senses where if you have $1 billion and you can buy anywhere in Melbourne, where would you buy? What are some of those suburbs worth looking into? So that's good. Let's go ahead and do a little bit more things. You can. I wanted to introduce at least one more concept, and then at that point we can kind of take stock of what is it that we learned, and see if you have got any questions. So let's say you're looking at the houses. Now, if you remember, this data doesn't really have houses alone. There is a lot of, you have a type column with three values, H, T, and U. So here, again, I'm making an assumption, but I think this is a fairly good assumption. H is house, T is a townhouse, and U is a unit. So unit is like an apartment. The townhouse is like a kind of like a house, but I think it'll share a wall or something with another house. So it has a mix of everything, and then we are analyzing all of this together. So you're saying average price of a vegetable, where you're looking at cabbage, carrot, and broccoli, and something really fancy. So everything you're averaging. Whereas it might be a prudent idea to just look at the houses or units or townhouses when you're doing the analysis, rather than bunching everything together. So the way to do this would be, you can do it in different ways. You can add a filter at a page level and look at just the houses and all of that. You probably already know some of these, so I'm not introducing them. But one thing that I would love to calculate is what proportion of our data is apartments. So we call this as apartment ratio. Again, completely making stuff up at this point. But let's just calculate what percentage of houses are or listings are apartments. So apartment would be anything that has a type of U. So we can calculate that as a new measure. This is apartment ratio. And we need two numbers. One is what is the total number of houses, and the other is what is the number of houses that are apartments, and then divide one with another to come up with this. So we're going to break this down into smaller chunks so you can see the flow, but you don't have to write it like a verbose way like I show. You can all shrink that into one formula if you want. So I'm going to make a variable, variable. The first one would be, we'll call this as APPT count, apartment count. And this one is calculate house count, type is U. So calculate function, what it does is it will take a measure that you have previously built, or you can write the whole thing here again, whatever measure you are doing, it will calculate that using a context that you specify here. So context here is you're telling, look at the type column and filter it down to U values only. So you're specifying a filter. So whatever filter you give, calculate will do that using that filter thing. Again, unfortunately, this is not a power pivot session, so I'm not going into depths of what really happens behind scenes. But suffice to say that when you use calculate, you can calculate any of the existing calculations in your power pivot by changing the nature of calculation somehow. Okay, we'll leave it like that. It's a very kind of like a flexible function that can do a lot of different things depending on what you're doing. So initially it will confuse a lot of people, but eventually you'll understand that this becomes the way of looking at things with Power Pivot World. I do have other videos on the channel where I deeply explain these things, so feel free to watch that. Alternatively, if you want to kind of really learn Power Pivot and Power BI and Power Query all in one place, without looking at 300 different videos and articles and all of that, I do run a Power Pivot course, Power BI course as well, where I cover all these three things in a greater depth with many examples and tutorials and all of that. So feel free to check out my website for the Power BI course and sign up for that. But whatever may be the case, whatever works for you. So we calculate like that. That'll give you how many apartments are there, and then where I don't want to say all count because that can kind of mislead. So we say is house count. So total houses is this, apartments are that, and then we want to return. So we are declaring two variables, each holding two parts of the puzzle. One is all the houses, the other is just the apartments. And then we want to return apartment count divide by total houses. This is it. Like I said, you don't have to write it like this. You can kind of directly write this divided by that, and you can also use the divide function. But if you do it like this, you can actually see the flow in that way. And we'll hit this. We'll format this as a percentage with, let's just go with one decimal place. So we got apartment ratio here, and we can again put a card and look at apartment ratio. 22% of all the houses are apartments. You can kind of double check these things if you go here and filter down to U and look at the status bar at the bottom. Ooh, messed it up. So 3,661 filtered. So that works out to be 22 percentage clearly, probably a little bit more, but yeah. So that's what it has really found. So internally, Power Pivot would do that filtering, count 661 once, and then count it without that 3,000, and then divide. That's because on this point, at this point of time, we are not filtering down to anything else. Imagine if I have got this card, Control C this, and paste it here as well. So initially it will say 22 because we are again not filtering down to anything. Now what would happen if I click on Brighton? So right now we have narrowed down to just the Brighton. And then within that 46, 15.2 are house apartments. So actually Brighton has fewer apartments, more houses. But if you go to some other like Balvin North, 7% apartments. So that's even less, like probably an outer suburb where there is a lot more space. There is no need for units. Everything is individual house. I don't know much about Melbourne, but like an inner city thing might have a different distribution. Um, yeah. So like that, you can kind of see what proportion of those houses are apartments. And again, that'll give you a sense of something about that suburb. I don't really know what we are looking for there. Maybe how dense it is, I guess. Um, I do want to give a shout out to Mark. Thanks for the super sticker, Mark. And coffee has gone completely cold now. So yeah, that's apartment ratio. You can use this kind of a logic to build average of just the houses kind of a thing. So instead of calculating a house count, you would calculate average price, where type is U, would give you average of houses or average of apartments and all of that. And use that to analyze the data and play with that to get a little bit. One other thing I thought would be fun to look at is how far the houses are. So average distance is average of distance to city, and then kind of add that to our table here to see how far these suburbs are. 8.7. So this is fairly close to the city. Let's see what are the closest suburbs. Okay, Collingwood. So you can see here Collingwood is inside the city, I think. 47. So half the houses are apartments. Carlton 57, and then Fitzroy, South Melbourne. So some of the suburbs that are closest to the city would also have a higher volume of units, and then the prices might be also different. Like Collingwood only 887,000 median and 889 average. That's because a majority of them would be apartments, and hence there is no land value involved, and the price might be less. So that's the analysis side of it. You can use this to play the house and ask yourself a question. If I have money, where would I buy? And then do that. But if you don't have to buy the house, you can do this for any kind of other analysis situations. I recently used the same data set for an Excel video as well. So that is also up in the channel. Feel free to watch that and compare Power BI versus Excel, especially if you work in both things and you do a little bit of both. It's helpful to see the same data being cut with Power BI and with Excel, and analyzing both of them. I'll go back and do a little bit of demo of what I have here. It's exactly same thing. We have cows count and average price and a little map chart. I customized the color here. Instead of green, I went with the red color because I thought it'll pop. And I also put a little bar graph, column graph on number of bedrooms to see what kind of houses are these. Like if I go back to Brighton, a majority of them are 3 or 4 bedroom houses. So that's the distribution we are looking at. If we go to Canterbury, this is what it is. And if I go to Balvin, that's how it is. So they do have 1 7-bedroom house there though. So that's probably an outlier that we can take out from the data. And then I put a little bit of suburb profile here that shows how many houses are there, what is the average distance, what is the ratio of apartments, and what is the overall average. Same value as that is there, just comes up here and rounded. And kind of neatly laid out everything and put a stock picture of Melbourne on the left hand side with the words Melbourne house pricing analysis to make it look fancy, I guess. But that's pretty much it. Even though our thing doesn't look fancy simply because it doesn't have Melbourne picture on it, you can bring it. So I'll show you for the sake of showing. If you want to add any images or logos or something, it's really simple. You just go to insert, click on image, and bring whatever background image you want to bring. It'll add. You can move this around and shuffle around the remaining things, and you're done. So that's how you can analyze the data. You have seen the journey of how to get the data in Power Query, how to do some EDA and clean up there, how to do some measures with Power Pivot, and how to visualize, how to confirm your analysis before you start making insights and outcomes and statements by looking at the numbers and making sure that you're substantiating the values, how to use averages, medians, calculate this and that to analyze the data differently. I do want to share one extra tip though, because I think in many cases people use tables. So I'm going to copy this table, put it in a new page. And here, I'll just quickly talk about how to make the tables pop, because a big part of data analysis in Power BI would involve working with tables one way or another. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to take out median price and average distance and just look at these 2 columns. Same rules will apply even if you have 5 other columns. It doesn't really matter. So one thing that you may want to consider is, again, depends on what your needs are. The total might be superfluous. Like you may not want to have the total row. This is really easy. You can just go to format, totals and off them. That's gone. The next thing, this is something that I definitely do, whether totals are there or not, is make sure that I'm giving breathing room for my data. So with tables, the problem is they tend to look very busy. Like if I look at this, uh, I'm a detail oriented person. I like to look at data. That's why I do this for living. But not everybody is like this. So a lot of people, when they see a lot of numbers, they get a little bit overwhelmed or panicked. Even though they don't express it on their face, their mind can be like, oh, there's so much there, I'm not going to look at it. And that's our natural tendency. So you want to make sure your data appears as light as possible. It should be insightful, but also it should not be uninviting. So how do we put a little bit of lipstick on this? So we can take this table, you can go to grid options, simple tricks. Okay, you can try, see what works and improvise later on. But I like to mess with the row padding. So this is called row padding here. It's set to 1 pixel by default, but if you set it to, you can try 3. You can see that with 3, what happens is there is an extra added either on top and bottom, and it increases the amount of space each row takes. It also reduces the number of rows visible, but that's fine. You'll have a little bit more breathing room. If you try 5, it becomes more pleasant on the eyes. Obviously, if you go too much, then it kind of overwhelms. Like if I go 10, then it can look a little bit like, there's nothing much there. So I like 3, maybe 5, depends on what is going on my screen. So usually I go with 3, and then I also tone down the number of font size. So maybe go down to 12, and then at this point change it to see what works. So depending on how you mix and match these things, you might be able to make the data look a lot more easier on the eyes. So this is one very simple trick. The second thing that I also try is, again, no hard and fast rules, but you should definitely consider these, is to make it a little bit more visual, like add some cues to the eyes. You don't want to overdo this because that can also overwhelm people. But we can try, for example, click on the average price and then go conditional formatting data bar, and then add a simple data bar. I don't want to go with a strong color because we have got 200 data points here. So that's going to look very busy. But something a little bit light like that, and that will set the tone. Like, it'll tell you these two are clearly so far ahead of the pack, 2.8 and 2.7, and then everything else kind of falls down to that. One thing that I find annoying with the data bars is they sometimes go and sit on top of the data like this. And this reduces the contrast of the number, making it harder to read. If you want to have your audience read the numbers, then data bar can overlap with that objective. So you need to mix and match. Also, you can ask yourself a question: is the number need to be so precise, like 2.84231? This is not like pi or anything, so you don't need to have that level of detail. So maybe a little bit of rounding down to millions might be all right. So those are some considerations. So for example, um, we can go to, I don't, okay, I don't think it's possible here. So we will need to do it in the measure tools, maybe. Nope. All right, you would be able to change the way this is formatted and show it in millions. With cards and others, it is available. Otherwise, we have to either write a format string or convert into millions and put another measure. I'm not able to quickly find it, but that's another option. Another thing that I also try is I'll make this column a little bit wider to squeeze it out, and then go to my conditional formatting data bar, instead of letting it go from lowest to highest, I enter custom. We can see that our highest suburb is 2.8. So I go from 0. Let's just double this. So 2.8 times 2 is 5.6. So I'm going to go with 6 million. So we're going to put some custom limits there. What that will do is it will assume that the whole column is 6 million. So 2.8 would be halfway through that, less than half. So the bar is always on the left side of the data. So both number and data are visible. But again, I'm going to debate the point that you don't need that precision to get what you want to say. So you may want to round this down to 1,000,001 decimal point or 2 decimal points. So now you can see this table is a lot lighter and welcoming than this table. Of course, there's more columns here too, but it also looks stronger. At this point, you may want to try different fonts, different colors to figure out what brings a good balance of information versus that feeling of fatigue or overwhelm to your audience. So those are some tips. I thought this is really important to share, especially because tables play a big role in how you present your data within Power BI. So it's a good idea to look for simple tricks to enhance the visuals. There's many others that you could do, but this is just a start. So definitely implement them whenever you do that. All right, let me just, I forgot that Mark super sticker was on screen for long. Sorry about that. Let me see some questions, if any. Virendra says, can you please share the background picture in description? You don't need that, mate. You can just download the background picture. I downloaded it from Unsplash and then or Pixar, one of the free images, and just added some text on PowerPoint. So feel free to download that. Somebody is not able to get their map chart, but unfortunately, I don't think I can help you there. It's a default visual, so it should appear. If it's not working, you may need to give permissions for it to access it. I think you're online, like you're watching this on YouTube, so obviously you're online. So yeah, probably search on forums. SE says idea for next masterclass: effective data visualization for non-technical audience. That's a great idea. Maybe I should implement that. Just a quick note though, if you do these kind of things for others, like you're making presentations and reports for executives and non-technical people, I talk a lot about this because data visualization is really my passion, right? So I talk a lot about these on my videos, but also in my class on Power BI that I run on my website. So there is like a huge emphasis given on making sure your visualizations and reports are consumable rather than you're not cooking this for yourself, you're making it somebody for somebody else. So from early on in the program, I make it a point that you're not making anything, you're making good stuff. So I explain different ways of looking at data, thinking it from different perspectives and presenting the right way. Yeah, so again, if somebody is interested, do check the program out and sign up. Not to turn this into a sales pitch or anything, but um, yeah, I think IMRB says on maps, change the option for latitude and longitude to don't summarize. I think, if you do have the correct categorization for the data, when you put lat and long, they should be don't summarize by default. Like for me here, it is not summarized. But for whatever weird reason, if you have got some or something, then you will get this kind of an error. So probably that's what is happening for you. You make sure that don't summarize is set. But I think that would be the default option if you go to the data view and set the data category. Then Power BI knows enough to not change it. But Shiva says, please do advanced DAX tutorial. Sure, maybe sometime. I do have previous live streams on advanced DAX as well. Check them out. There are other DAX videos on the channel. Watch them. Yeah, and if you want even more, my course is always there for you. Sign up. Tomek says, so the principal difference between Excel and Power BI would be remarkably enhanced data visualization. I wouldn't say remarkably. That's because Power BI and Excel are two different platforms. So the visualization choices in the options that you have for customizing them are all different. But Power BI gives you a much more polished and interactive experience than what you can get right out of the box with Excel. So there is interactions built in. There is layers of filtering that you can add to kind of shrink the data down to points that are material for you. And obviously native support for maps and other things, plus the security of your data. So whatever you do, you publish it, you can kind of control who gets to see it, who gets to mess around with all of your stuff and all of that through Power BI. Whereas your Excel workbook, if you save it to share it with somebody, and they can see what you built, but they can also go and change your formulas and mess up all the underlying work. So, and obviously your data is also not secure. So those are some of the selling points for Power BI. Um, yeah. Piyush says, how do we share this if we don't have company email? You can sign up for a Power BI account if you don't have your like you just have a Gmail or Yahoo Mail or Hotmail account and you're not able to sign up. If you search on Google or whatever search engine you're using, how to get Power BI online account without company address, you'll find an article from Microsoft telling you how to do that. You just have to sign up for an Office trial as well, free trial. You don't need to pay anything. And then they'll give you a Microsoft account that you can use. So for example, here you can see, not that I want to reveal my email address, and then, I don't even check this mail, but you can see the Chandoo.onmicrosoft.com. So that's the domain that they'll give you. And then you can use that to sign up for Power BI. So it's a very simple process. You just need to search online. Okay, I'm definitely going to butcher your name, so I'm not going to say that. Can you please create videos on how to create portfolio with Power BI, Power Query, Power Pivot, SQL? I am new to this and trying to make a career change. Your great videos are great sources for me. Thanks a lot. Uh, I do have lots of videos on all of these topics on the channel. The portfolio is like a fancy word people throw around, but essentially you built this, whatever I showed you on the screen. This is your portfolio, and you don't need to do anything more. But hopefully, if there is enough interest, I might talk about it in an upcoming video. So let me know in the chat, in the comments below, if you want me to talk about this, like how to build a data analyst portfolio. I'll talk about that. William says it will be helpful if you can discuss a table of each Excel formula mostly used in its equivalent DAX formula. Um, this is a very tempting idea, and I'm gonna say no. This is because I think this one calls for bigger face so that the point is clear. There is a lot of temptation, and I fell into this trap early on. Power BI is it's 8 years old now, so it has been around for a while. And early on, when I was learning Power BI and Power Pivot to be specific, so Power Pivot is around for more than 10 years now, 12, 11 years probably. So when I started learning Power Pivot, I had this temptation that Excel had this, Power Pivot has this. So always do a mapping exercise between my Excel world and my soon to be Power Pivot world. And that was, boy, oh boy, what a massive mistake it was. Like, it put me on a wrong track. And I went on that track for not 1 month, not 1 year, but almost 4 years. Like, I traveled on that, always thinking I would do X in Excel. I should be doing this in Power Pivot to get that. And that was, I don't call it like a very big, I think that was a very valuable learning experience for me. But if you are learning today, I suggest that you don't go down this track and waste years of your life and agony. The problem here is if you try to think Excel and Power Pivot or Power BI as two sides of the coin and try to always map things out, you might succeed initially because there are average function in both of them. Some function is there, count is there, and few others are there. So you might succeed, but eventually you'll come to places where things don't make any sense at all. So a better approach, this is what I recommend to everybody who is learning Power BI these days. I say this repeatedly in my videos, in my classes, everywhere, is don't think of this and that as two sides. Think of this as two languages. So think of it like, English alphabet. You grew up in, let's say, US or UK or one of these places where English is spoken. So you know how the alphabet looks, how the script looks, and then you suddenly go and land yourself in a foreign land. For the sake of simplicity, let's go to France. You see the road signs, you see the words in restaurant menus and everything. The script is English, so you might be tempted to read it like English, but it's not. It's a different language. So rather than doing one on one, because you might succeed initially, but then the grammar is different, the rules are different, everything is different. It will be a lot helpful if you reset your mind and think, this is a different thing, I'm going to learn it like that. You will succeed a lot faster. So do the same for Power Pivot. Don't don't fall into this trap that I already did. Instead, focus on learning Power Pivot and Power BI as if it's a brand new thing, although it shares the script with Excel formula language, syntax, and some of the grammar, it's a different thing. So once you think like that, you will liberate your mind. You will be able to actually see for what it is and learn it. So do that. I won't be doing a video on this or anything. It's just not correct. So yeah, enough of that rant. Let's just see. Python R. I got some videos on both of these on my channel. Check it out. I don't use the Python or R visuals as much in Power BI. From time to time, I do. If and when I do that, I see some potential real world use case, I made some videos. So watch them. Not many people watch those videos, so sometimes I take a lot of feedback from the channel, right? Because I'm a data analyst at the core. So if I make a video or a social media post and I see that this one is getting a lot of engagement, people are learning from it, people are enjoying it, then I use that to see, oh, this is what more of you want to learn. So I'll talk about that. Of course, I'm also a creative person, so I want to pursue my own passion and make stuff for the joy of creating things. But as an individual, my mission is to make you awesome. So I can only do that if there is you in there. So that's why if there is certain sufficient number of people interested in the topic, that's what I get to make more. So power Power BI plus R, Power BI plus Python. I made some videos, watch them, and if you, the more you see and share that, probably the better feedback I get, and now I might make more. I'm not saying, you need to watch all of them. It's just that there seems to be not enough real life use cases either. William says, thank you, Chandoo. That's spiritual and rich knowledge. It's a blessing to have you in this. Thank you. Thank you so much for that love. And where do you where do you need Python in PBI environment? So you can use it if you are not able to do what you want with what Power BI is offering you at its features level. So, for example, the last time around I used Python is, I think I used R, but you can also use Python for this, is to connect to a an Amazon S3 bucket, but you can't just connect to it because it's not public. You need an API and an access key, secret key to get in there. So that means it's kind of like a login handshake needs to happen. So a little bit of code needs to be written that will go and run it against the bucket and then give it the credentials and then get the resource back. So I wrote a small, I'm saying I, but it was actually Joe, my wife, who wrote that, and she showed it to me. So I asked her to make a guest appearance on the channel and tell us all how to do it. So that was one scenario. Likewise, Python has a lot of visuals that are not available in Power BI yet, so you may want to use them. Python also has, Python and R, both of them have an extensive library of data, data analytics, machine learning, and AI algorithms available to you. So you could kind of apply them on top of your data as part of Power BI. And if you want, you can do that. And some people are more comfortable with some of the native libraries of Python, like pandas and all of that, to do data transformations rather than Power Query. So you could do that, run Python script to do transformations and collect the data and all of that, and then use Power BI for visualizing data. So those are some of the scenarios. Aryan says, I just started coding with R. Would you say first language for data science beginner? I don't know. It's probably good enough. Yeah, if you're enjoying it, do it. All right. I think we are now going into the questions that are like way out of syllabus. It's like we are looking at Melbourne house price data, but now suddenly we are looking at house prices in San Francisco, not even in the same continent. So I don't want to dilute the stream into that. We're gonna put a hard stop here and save this file. And if you do have any other questions, let me know. I'll hang around for a bit. Mark says, fabulous training experience. Again, looking to replay to walkthrough training together with data. Lots of love from USA. Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for tuning in again. And thanks for that super. And yeah, have a beautiful, amazing weekend. It's almost 7 a.m. in the morning now. I'm gonna go wake up my wife. My daughter has a netball game, so we're all gonna go there. But those of you who are here, before you go, I want to make a huge, huge announcement. Well, I should have even done that at the start. I don't know what is going on. But some of you know that I used to run a podcast, and the podcast kind of went dormant after 2016. But I recently relaunched my podcast. So if you enjoy my work and you've been here for 2 hours, which is like a huge thing, thank you. You are gonna love my podcast. So I've launched it again. The first two episodes are already out. So if you go to category podcast on my website, in fact, if you go to my website, you will find that there. But the podcast is out. The first episode is called Top 5 Excel Skills You Need to Be a Successful Data Analyst in 2023. And the next one, which is just launched yesterday, 6 Tips to Get a Six-Figure Data Job. I really love doing the podcast. As you can clearly see, I enjoy talking. And this is something that I love. I had lots of fun back in 2014 to 16 when I did about 56 episodes, but the last one was in 2016, and then I kind of went silent. But I picked up where I left, and I'm just loving it. I've got some great shows planned. I'm lining up some guest interviews and all of that. But if you like what I do and you like to learn something fun and you like my style and whatnot, podcast is a good choice. So definitely get it. It's on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. So search for Chandoo in any of these, you'll find that. Sign up. I mean, there's no sign up. It's free thing. Tune in, listen to an episode or two, share it with your friends, and leave a review if you're enjoying that. I think that's always helpful. So yeah, check out the podcast. It's something not new, but kind of renewed that, and I'm hoping, because I like what I'm doing on YouTube, and I thought it should be really obvious that I should have started podcast even a year ago, but I always brushed aside that I don't want to do it again. But this is something that I will be fairly doing it like twice every month or once every month from going on. So yeah, check it out. And if you're already listening to it, let me know in the chat or comments what you think about it. All right. Eloy says, thanks for this tripping. I found this by accident. I'm so glad I learned a lot from you as always. Love from Spain. Thank you so much. Yeah, welcome. Welcome to this little crazy corner of the internet, and good to have you. Aryan says, why don't you feature it in your channel section? I will add that. I mean, YouTube has a podcast option now, but this is just an audio only podcast. So I don't want to add audio episodes on YouTube, but I'll figure out a way to share it if later on. As he says, yes, excited for the podcast. Haven't got the chance to listen to the recent post episode yet. That's all right. Yeah, tune in the weekend when you go for a walk or something and let me know how it goes. Aftab says, I'll watch DAX related videos. I don't like to learn DAX. Should I learn? Um, I would say to get more out of Power BI, you do need DAX. You don't have to learn it, but you need DAX. So if you have got a team and you got somebody else to do the DAX for you, let them do it. But if you are a one man army, which is the case for most of us, right? Then probably learning DAX is like a bitter pill that you should swallow at one point or another. You don't have to put up with a lot. You can use Chat GPT, or Power BI also has built in uh, kind of like a AI thing where you can ask what you want and it'll write the DAX for you. Most of the time, it is kind of like too verbose and garbagey than what I would normally do. But learning it is helpful. It is a little bit tricky in the initial stages, but once you come over that hump, then it's kind of like a smooth sail until you find the next hump, at which point you may want to give up or hire smarter people. Um, but yeah, it's not super hard. So just take your time. Don't punish yourself if you don't get things. It's all right. It took me, like I said, more than 5 years to learn DAX. So don't be surprised if you spend 5 months learning it. That's all right. Don't expect to learn it with one YouTube video or one course though. Give it time, you will learn. Rakesh asks, can you give me a book or PDF where I can get all the DAX? Uh, I do have some book recommendations on my channel. I'll put more in the video description later on. Um, yeah, I think that's better than Chandoo's crazy corner of the internet. Yay. That should be the channel name. George says, thank you. Learned a lot from Power BI from your videos. Definitely checking the podcast. Greetings from Guatemala. Thank you, George. Shiva says, do a project on SQL plus Power BI next time. I did. The last live was actually on this SQL plus Power BI. So watch it in the live stream section of my channel. If you go to the past live streams, you will find the SQL plus Power BI one. Watch it. It was exactly on that topic. So yeah, Clive says supercharged by Power BI by Matt Allington is an awesome book. That was what I was going to put in the video recommendation anyway. Get that book from Matt if you want to. It's kind of not like everything, but should be sufficient for the initial one or two humps that you will face in the DAX journey. Tyzoon is here. Can you suggest a way to learn all DAX expression? Again, don't think of it like this. There is no such thing as all DAX. You just as you wouldn't learn English language by buying a dictionary or memorizing all the 26 letters of alphabet. You don't learn DAX or literally any computer programming thing by learning all the things. That's while it is tempting, it is also not the right way to look at it. Instead, ask yourself questions like what are the business things, analysis themes that I need to be focusing on in the next 6 to 12 months, and then learn what is required for that. That is enough. And then after that, reprioritize and add more things as you grow. That is the best way to look at it. You know, even a simpler analogy would be if you want to become a carpenter, you don't focus on learning how to use a hammer, screwdriver, and nail gun. You do need those things, but those are just things to get you somewhere else. So you need other stuff as well. So focus on the other things first. Yeah, you can if you know where you're going, you can always find help along way. Whereas if you learn all of these things, then you will definitely get lost. Like even a simple function like all, there are like 10 different all functions in DAX, and you try to memorize all of them, then you will not really know why or when or how or what makes them tick for your situation. Whereas if you know what your situation is, you can work backwards and figure out things. Buzz. Hi, Chandoo. Like the way you explain things, I learned a lot of topics. Way too many things. Thanks, Chandoo from Dubai, I think. Yeah. Thanks, Abbas. I remember your name as well from some of the comments that you leave often on the videos. Thank you so much for tuning in. Kind of pitching. Do you train on SQL, Power BI, Tableau, R, and Python as classes? Ben from USA. I do most of these. I don't teach Python and R. I can write code myself in those things, but I'm not. I don't consider myself to be a teacher in them. I do have Python video on my channel though. So if you want to learn some of these things either for yourself or your team, let me know. Drop an email to me, and I can point you in the right place. I have got courses on Power BI and Excel, and I'm hoping soon I'll launch an SQL course as well. Um, but this is the Power BI course that I was talking about even previously. So if anybody is interested, I think this course would be kind of like one place where you'll get everything that you want with Power BI. So check it out. It's a fairly popular class. Uh, People sign up for this every day, and they kind of unlock. It's not super expensive either. The Power BI portion is about $200, or you can pay in rupees as well, about 12,000 rupees. So it's not very expensive, but it will give you very decent level of depth, like almost. I wanted to show you some pictures. Yeah, so you can see how to create reports and analysis of things like this, all with this program. These are just some snapshots. There's more in that program as well. So check it out and sign up if you want to learn Power BI without spending too much time and going down the wrong rabbit holes on YouTube and Google and ChatGPT all the time. Yeah, so that's that. But I do have other options as well. Let me know. Email me and then we can Chris says, hello. Hi, Chandoo. Just curious. Do you regularly communicate and collaborate on projects with other MVPs such as Bill, Mike, Laila, Minda, etc.? Love your channel. I do. For my podcast, I'm hoping to interview, I don't want to give out the name right now. One of them, I do stay in contact through email with Microsoft Teams and fellow MVPs. We all got a mailing list, so we all kind of yammer all the time, and yeah, share notes and swap. Some of the uh, like Laila and Minda, I mean, we do kind of chat when we are meeting at an event or something. Last time I met Laila was in conference in Europe sometime back, and probably Minda around a conference in Auckland or Australia too. So yeah, whenever there is a physical event and I have the fortune of traveling and meeting, I always meet these people. But otherwise, it's always collaborating through emails and doing something fun together. But all of us probably are just as busy too, right? So uh, running a channel, maintaining a family, and hobbies, all of these take their own sweet little time. So sometimes it is too hard to set time. But I will be bringing one of these four that you mentioned as a podcast guest soon. So you'll find that out when it happens. Yes, I think we should wrap up this now before it becomes obsolete. Yes. Do you think Power BI will become obsolete by another software? What gives freedom to everyone to create their dashboards, not just to those who know Power BI? Literally everything in life is going to be an obsolete thing very soon. Not to kind of put a nihilistic perspective on everything, but nothing is permanent. So I would be excited. Power BI wasn't there when I started my website. It is there now. It may not be there tomorrow. I'm not attached to it or anything. So that's all good. Whatever it is, I learn. I like to learn. I like to talk. I like to share what I'm learning. So I might do something else if that happens. All right. On that note, I'm gonna say goodbye. We have been talking for 2 hours, 15 minutes now. It has been an awesome fun doing this stream again. And fortunately, my teeth or my inner lining doesn't hurt. So that's all good. I was worried that, I may have to stop talking halfway through because my wires are cutting into the jaw or whatever, but that didn't happen. So that's all good. I had fun. I hope you all enjoyed it. We built something cool and beautiful, and we looked at different parts of Power BI, Power Query, and Power Pivot. The sample data set is in the video description, so feel free to grab it, give it a try yourself, and let me know if you're watching it in the replay or so far, and then you're able to build something in the chat as well, comment as well, what you're doing with these things, how you use the data, and what awesome things you're building with that. So let us know. It'll be fun to see what you're doing and build that. And on that note, I'll take your leave. Thank you so much. You have a beautiful weekend. I better go down and start preparing breakfast before my daughter gets up because she needs a game. She is going for a game now. Thanks all, and you have a beautiful weekend. I'll catch you again next time when I do live or next Tuesday when the new video goes out on the channel. Thanks. Bye.